Hey everyone, and welcome to Recharge the podcast. I'm David Coe. My guest today is a highly respected visionary leader and healthcare industry trailblazer, once referred to as the most powerful female CEO in America. Her mission is to challenge the status quo, to normalize mental health conversations, and drive positive change. It's deeply personal and shaped by her own experience. As president and CEO of companies like Aetna and CVS Health, she didn't simply take up space at the table. She sat front and center, leading with purpose, clarity, and authenticity. So let's recharge with Karen Lynch. Hi, Karen. Thank you so much for being here with us today on Recharge.
Hi, David. It's a pleasure.
Well, I am so looking forward to spending time with you today. And one of the ways we always kind of kick this off on this podcast is we ask all of our guests, how's your battery? And the reason we ask that question is I wrote a book called Recharge, and we tried to say, think about your mental health as a phone battery. And so I just wanted to know, how is your battery today and why?
Well, my battery is fully charged today because I have the opportunity to talk with you about mental health, which is something I'm very, very passionate
Yes.
about. So I couldn't be more energized.
Well, thank you. My battery is too at 100%. And so I know that's cliche, but it's very true spending time with you. And I always kind of like to ease into my conversations a little bit, but because I know that you're so passionate about mental health and you've been so personal and you've been so open, I just wanted to kind of go into a little bit of a heavier topic right off the bat. And that is that your mother really struggled with her own mental health, as you've spoken about in the past, in her entire life, and then tragically died by suicide when you were just 12 years old. And I wanted to ask you, how did that experience impact you? How did that experience really shape the person that you are today?
Well, as you can imagine, it had a significant impact on me as a daughter, as a niece. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
As a human being, now as a wife, it really, impacted me in ways that I probably would have never imagined. David, I spent a lot of time, many, many, many years, ashamed, afraid to talk about it. I wouldn't tell people how she died because I was embarrassed. And, and now in retrospect, I'm so glad I talk about it, because if it impacts just one person to, have that conversation around suicide, I'll feel gratified. It's a difficult journey, and it's, even at my age now, many, many years later, I still have a, challenge to talk about it. But she needed help. And what I learned, David, was that silence isn't really the key. We have to talk about it to get help. Silence doesn't protect us. Talking about it helps us a lot.
Thank you for sharing. I mean, even right now, and this is something that you, when you became president and CEO, and you talked about this publicly in 2015 at one of your town halls, and you really opened up about this and about your mom. And I read that you weren't planning on doing that,
Yeah.
right? And so, what in that spur of the moment made you decide to open up to the company
Yeah.
about that in the town hall?
We were talking a lot about kind of mental health and physical health at the time, and we were, doing a strategy to really combine the two. And I stood on stage, and as a leader, I thought, I have to share my story. How can I get people to follow me if I'm not telling the truth about what really happened to me? And I can vividly remember exactly where I was on that stage.
Huh.
And I remembered my whole entire body just tensing up, and just my head saying, you got to do it. And when I did it, I saw in the room, and I can see those faces today, shock. I saw tears in people's eyes. And, at the end of the day, I felt relieved because I wasn't hiding anything, and for me, honesty is a bridge to truth. And really that's what I created that day, that kind of overall bridge to truth. And I'm, really passionate about mental health and physical health. You can't separate the two. And that was part of our overall strategy. And it was really important. And I had people lined up, David, at the end of my talk to talk to me about the challenges that they were having. And I had a woman reach out to me on email and said, my son passed away by suicide, and I've never shared that story.
Oh,
You
wow.
giving me that opportunity now. So thank you.
That gives me
And,
goosebumps here and chills. Yeah.
and David, what's interesting about the whole thing is now that I do talk about it, everybody has a story.
Mm.
Everybody is impacted in some way, shape, or form by mental health. And you probably know, and we can talk about this later, but my husband is a big advocate in mental health, and he runs a not-for-profit foundation in mental health. And so the combination of the two of us, it's pretty powerful in what we're trying to do to destigmatize the mental health and talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And did that experience, as you talked about, did you ever kind of wonder, I should have had this conversation sooner?
I don't know if I was ready.
Hmm.
I think there's a point in time when you're ready, and I think maybe probably for my own mental health, I probably should have talked about it earlier. But I think that that was the right time, the right platform, and I had a platform, and I was in a big leadership position, and I had the opportunity to make an impact and make a difference. I think, you have to be ready, but I think like people like you and like me and others that are talking about it, I'm hoping that people that are 14 and 12 and 16 will feel more ready, because when we were younger, people weren't talking about it. And, you think about kind of the evolution. More people talk about it today than they did even 2, 3, 4 years ago. And I think it's evolving. I think those are the kinds of things that made us ready. And by us talking about it, David, we have the opportunity to hopefully impact lots of people's lives, and hopefully they are ready sooner and get the help they need sooner.
Yeah, so true. Are you seeing that with leadership in general, when this evolution of leadership talking about mental health? Are you happy with where that conversation is today?
I don't know that I'll ever be happy. I think it's evolving and it continues to evolve.
Mm.
I don't think I'll be satisfied until there's not the difference between mental health and physical health.
Yes.
When people have brought it together, you can't talk about diabetes and cancer without talking about anxiety and
Yes.
depression. You can't talk about having a baby without talking about postpartum depression. We're not there yet, David.
Mm.
And until protocols, until the way the way healthcare is delivered and it's delivered holistically, that's when I'll feel that more satisfied than I do today.
I love that answer. I love that answer. I want to switch gears and talk about your Aunt Millie for a quick sec, okay? Because she's had a big influence on your life.
Yep.
And, after your mom's passing, you were raised by your aunt.
Yep.
And I don't know how many people know this, but you started off as an accountant. I too started off as an accountant, so we have that in common. Okay, and
debits and credits, everything in place.
debits and credits, debits and credits. But your aunt was like a driving force behind some of the pivot that you made into healthcare. Can you just why was that?
Yeah, so let me just 2 minutes on
Yeah.
it, because I think it's really important. So her parents came over here from Poland. They didn't speak any English. She helped sort of raise them, so to speak. She ended up getting married and having a son, and lost her husband, and so she was a single mom before before single moms were kind of
Yeah.
more the norm. And then she took all 4 of us in. My aunt didn't have a high school education. She worked in a factory making baby clothes. She worked for Carter's. She never drove.
Wow.
She had the wisdom of anyone that you would ever meet. And so, taking us in, she didn't have to do that, David.
Yeah.
She took us in, and she was a tough cookie, I'll tell you that. And I can hear her voice. She had one of those baritone big voices. And you didn't mess with Aunt Millie, and she always said, you can do whatever you want to do in life. You just need to be focused on it. And my aunt ended up getting breast cancer and lung cancer. And I sat in a room with her at 26 years old, and I didn't know what questions to ask. I didn't know what the doctor was saying. And I, sort of at that point in my life, I said, you know what, with the impact that I had with suicide, with my mom, with my aunt dying, I was still young. I decided I had to make a pivot and see how I could impact healthcare. And that's really what made the change into healthcare. And I know for sure she'd be smiling right now if she, could see sort of the arc of my overall career and what impacts I've had.
Absolutely, absolutely. What a big impact she's made for all of us because of her decision there. I want to go back to something because you said this a little bit earlier about the connection around your mental and physical health. And one of the things that we've worked really hard here at Calm to do is to help people understand that the linkage between your mental and physical health and how they do affect each other. Why are you still so passionate about it today?
You and I both know that over half of all Americans don't have access to a mental health provider. And I think that if there's not voices speaking out on this topic about the importance of physical health and mental health, we're not going to make progress, even on physical health. I often use this as an example when women have babies, the most joyful time of their life. Many suffer from postpartum depression, and we're not treating it that way. We're not treating that person like the holistic, hey, you had a baby, let's talk about, some options that may happen to you and things you should be doing. And, you get cancer. 9 times out of 10, you're going to suffer from depression.
Yes.
Right? And if we don't continue to kind of have the healthcare protocols around physical and mental health, then we're not going to be as healthy individuals as we need to be. And, we talk about making America healthy. Well, this is part of making America healthy.
That's right. That's right. And you've brought up some real big points that are being talked about a lot, whether it's the access piece, funding. How do we start to fill in some of these gaps?
Well, in my mind, I think, David, there's a couple things. One, I think we have to expand the pipeline. We need to encourage people to go into the profession. And, either through training programs, scholarship programs. I think that kind of big bracket. Obviously, we need to maximize the existing workforce. And what does that mean? That means, how can we maybe expand scope of practice? How do we help with more peer support? We have to leverage technology, with telehealth and those kinds of things, because people in rural America don't have necessarily the access they need. So we need to continue to leverage technology and we'll continue to drive, policy reform, particularly on the reimbursement side. As you look at how mental health professionals are paid, they're underpaid. And there's not one single answer. There's many things that need to happen in this space.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for calling that out, especially amongst, just the profession of salaries, right? So I've talked about this even for nurses, for example. I feel like they are at times they're unheralded and we should pay them more for all the service that they do.
I think that's absolutely right.
Speaking of your career, and as we move away from policy and talk a little bit more about you and your career and at the highest levels, whether it was being president or CEO, right, of CVS Health. So when you first started out and you were in accounting and then moving into healthcare, was this one of your goals always to be CEO of a company or president? How did a young Karen kind of start out in the corporate world, and what were your goals and aspirations?
Well, I don't know that I started out to say I'm going to be a CEO, although my sisters would tell you that I would sit behind a desk and bark out orders to them when I was a young kid. So maybe that was a bellwether, although barking out orders is not how I lead, but maybe that was some sort of bellwether. But It wasn't ever about kind of being the CEO. It was more about how can I have an impact? How can I drive results? How do I sort of use that intellectual curiosity to drive a winning strategy?
Mm.
And so it was really those kinds of things that really led me to the career path that I had. And I didn't get there alone. I had great sponsors, great mentors, great teams. And you and I both know
Yeah.
leaders don't get, to places by themselves. There's a whole village of people that really supported me. And, I think people saw something in me before I even saw it in myself, quite frankly.
It always takes someone to see something in you and give you that affirmation. I want to talk to you a little bit about the book you wrote in 24. You wrote that book, Taking Up Space, and that's because of something that was said to you.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing what was said and the inspiration behind the title?
Yeah. So I was very young in my career, David, and I walked into a room and I said, "Where should I sit?" Eager, young, professional. "Ugh, you should just sit in the back of the room because women just take up space in the boardroom."
Mm.
So I thought that was like the best title, given
Yeah.
that, that person, at that time, we're talking late 80s, right?
Yeah.
When there's not a lot of women in big senior jobs. And that's the way he felt. And I'm very pleased to say that I took up a lot of space. And,
Oh,
um, and
love
really
that.
I wrote the book with one purpose in mind to really share some of the stories and some of the challenges and some of the experiences that I had. And at the end of every chapter, I share lessons learned. And
That's
I
right.
hope if one person benefits from that, I'll be really happy. We donate all the proceeds to not-for-profit foundations in mental health,
Mhm.
and so I'm not making any profit off of it. And I'm, really pleased with when people read the book, the comments that come back to me and the experiences that people have had. So as much as women have come a long way, we have a long way to go in treating women equally and in the workforce.
Well, thank you for writing that book, and I hope you continue to write more. But speaking about how far, or maybe how little the conversation has continued to evolve, the fact of the matter is, even though that's something that was said to you, you were still able to, take that channel and get to the top of your profession. When you became CEO, there was a handful of people that were on the Forbes and kind of, your Fortune 500 list of women CEOs in the industry. And a lot has been made to say, okay, that number has risen over the past number of years. But I would say many people would still argue that there's not enough,
Mhm.
and that there should be more women who are on that list. And so, what needs to happen for more women to be in leadership positions, in your opinion, going forward?
Well, it's a great question, and more women do need to be on that list. I mean, in 2014, I think it was less than 5% women were on the Fortune
Yeah.
500, and in 2024, it was a little over 10%. And people will say, "Hey, it's been doubled." Okay, that's really great, but 10% out of
Yeah.
500. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
So. I think there's a number of things that need to happen. I think, first and foremost, women need to, continue to have the opportunities in P&L jobs, to kind of drive to if they're driving to the CEO job. I think more and more, people need to step back and pull people up and continue to do that.
Yes. Yes.
I always say there's a lot of chairs at the table, pull one up for someone.
Oh, I
Because when
love
I was
that.
right, and really there's sponsorship and mentorship. I was so fortunate to benefit from great sponsors and great mentors my entire career.
Mhm.
I had a CFO that I worked for at Cigna when I went to Magellan, and I was the president of Magellan. My very first press release. Now he was retired, and he marked up the entire press release and sent it back to me. And the reason he did that was because he was still sponsoring me, because he wanted to, say, okay, but here's what you could have said, or here's what you could have done differently.
Oh,
I mean, I remember being devastated, but at the same time, I'm like, in retrospect, he was really helping.
yeah, he cared.
And I think we all need to do that, women, men, whatever, but I think it's really important. And David, one of the things, I don't know if you know this, but one of the things that Kevin and I just did, we're building the Karen S. Lynch Leadership Institute
Ugh,
in collaboration with Lynn University. And so we're building a leadership program. They're going to build a curriculum for the MBA students around my book.
oh, that's
We
so great.
have done endowed scholarships for underprivileged people that want to go to Lynn University. And then we're going to be doing symposiums and podcasts to talk about leadership development. And we have a dedicated floor where students can come to talk about innovation, leadership, and most importantly, the thing I really wanted to make sure was part of this Leadership Institute was giving back to the community and
Mm.
like the social impact that you can have. So our ribbon cutting is in a couple of weeks, and we
Okay.
couldn't be more thrilled.
That's amazing, and congratulations. That's
Thank you.
absolutely incredible, and thank you for your continued, impact that you're making with the broader community. You've been so thoughtful on these leadership and your philosophy and style, and you also have been quoted as saying the sign of leadership is not how you're leading, it's are people following you to support your mission. And I just wanted to ask you, what did you mean by that? And how do you build that following for folks that are curious?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost, leaders have to illuminate the path forward,
Mm.
and then they have to have clarity in the actions that they're taking on that path. And then I think leaders need to have consistency in the actions that they take.
Mm.
And they have to build trust. They have to, by far, they have to have integrity
Yeah.
because people aren't going to follow unless they believe in the mission.
Yeah.
They believe in the purpose. They believe in the actions,
Mm.
and they have clarity in which that you're doing it in, and they trust. And I think those are the things that really, define how you have followership. And again, my CFO, sponsor, one of the things that he drilled into all of us financial professionals early in our career was we're going to evaluate you on followership, followership,
Wow.
followership. And we
Nice.
talked a lot about it early career, and it's had a lasting impact on me.
Mm. And now I want to shift a little and talk about, personal strategies for, CEOs and others, like just staying mentally fit. We've here at Com conducted a survey that really just focused on the state of executive mental health. And while we found some of the work is encouraging, we also found that there's still a lot of work to be done. An example is like, we may see that 1 in 4 leaders have reported that, their battery is fully charged. But the fact of the matter is that's just on the surface. And below that surface, that they're really struggling. And so and whether it's with sleep, whether it's just really thinking about the business, the survey found that leaders think about quitting about once a month. And 1 in 5, let's say women think about a career change at least once a week, which, I just sit back and go once a week. So when you hear some of these stats, what is your reaction to that? And did you ever feel that way in any of your jobs?
Well, first of all, I'm not surprised. I mean, leadership can be draining. It is incredibly stressful. And given the environment that we're in today, with all of the political unrest, the raging wars, you can't pick up a newspaper and read any good
Yes.
news, right?
Yeah.
So with all that compounding, I'm not surprised by the results. Did I ever feel that way? Yeah, of course, lots of times. There were times I'd come home and like I can't do this anymore, and my husband was like, well, okay, then just quit. And I'm like, no, I can't quit. And what I always did was I kind of just went back and said, do like reflection. What's my why?
Mm.
What's my purpose? why am I doing this? And that would get me sort of, motivated again.
Mm,
I always say leadership is not for the faint of heart, right?
mm,
You're making tough decisions every day, and people expect you to make hard choices.
mm.
And a lot of times people don't go into leadership because they don't want that responsibility. It is an awesome responsibility, and it is draining, and it is tough. And you have to develop strategies, both mental strategies and physical strategies. And
Mm.
I never gave up a workout. Like, I worked out, that was in my calendar. And I always tell people, like, put in your calendar. I'm coaching a gentleman that's on the CEO path right now. And he's like, I just never have time to work out. I go, no, you don't make it a priority.
Oh, that's right.
Because if it was a priority for you, you would do it. And I said, I never missed a workout. I'm a Peloton, like, I did it at home. I'm a Peloton fanatic. And now I'm like into Orange Theory, David. Like,
The
but
competitive spirit. I see it coming out in you, Karen. I see it.
yeah. And so, but those are the kinds of things you have to do because it is stressful. And then you have to have, a network of people that you trust that you can talk to. Because sometimes it's just, talking. And, hopefully you have a strong support system at home, a spouse that listens to you. I mean, my husband used to, all right, I've had enough. But those are the kinds of things that you need. You have to kind of, what's that purpose? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Get some of the recharging kinds of things, sleep would be one of them. And then, working out and, even just getting outdoors and walking the dog or, my husband used to take my phone away at dinner time.
Huh.
And it was
How did you feel about that?
I stressed a little, but then I'm like, you know what? Because one of the things my husband always reminded me was all of this will go away someday.
Hmm.
And I'm going to be the one that's holding your hand on your deathbed.
Hmm.
And I'm like, well, nothing puts it in perspective but that. And so I'm like, oh, you know what? I think I could put my phone away for an hour.
I love that. I wanted to ask you a question around sleep. We've had a
Yeah.
lot of surveys around sleep, how, people used to brag about how little sleep they got. And now many CEOs have agreed the importance of sleep. 81% of them have said it's important to get sleep because it really affects how you can be your best self the next day. My question to you is, how do you sleep? And what are some of the things and tips that you do to have a better night's sleep?
Well, I sleep better now, a lot better now. But I would do like meditation, like listen to meditation before I
Mm,
go to sleep. That always helped me kind of just calm. I used to be one of those. Okay, less sleep, higher productivity. My whole perspective about that has changed. I look at as a performance strategy. If you're not getting enough sleep, and when I didn't get enough sleep, I was irritable. I wasn't present. So I saw the signs when I wasn't getting enough sleep. But I need sleep. And, I always felt like when I didn't get it, I was tired. I wasn't on my game. And
yeah.
I think when you get enough sleep, you're on your game. And, just look at athletes' performance. They know they sleep. And so I think, there's a lesson learned from athletic performance about sleep. But I read a lot, and so I try. Sometimes I'll read before I go to bed, and that helped too.
That's great. That's great. I try to read as well. I wanted to ask you about switching around when you were CEO and mental health tools and services in the workplace. I think most CEOs today recognize that, if we focus on our mental health, it really can impact the bottom line. So it's not just something that, it's a nice to have. It's really now turning into a must have. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of our employees still don't get the care that they need. Why do you think that is still today?
I think there's a couple things. One, I still think there's a stigma around
Mm,
mental health. I think that there's an awareness of, the resources that a lot of companies have. And one of the things that we used to do was really promote our mental health and mental
mm,
well-being resources. And I think more and more companies are doing that, but I don't think you ever can do enough. I think that A lot of companies don't talk about it and don't prioritize it.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason. I find that most companies that kind of put it on the agenda of their health platform, I think people get the help that they need. Because if they're not getting the help they need, you're going to have higher medical costs. You're going to have higher behavioral health care costs. So it's just like anything else. If you don't get your physical every year, you're going to miss all those things. And then the cost of healthcare will increase exponentially. It's the same thing with mental health. If you're not doing the kinds of things that you need to do, if you're not promoting the resources that are available, it will be costly in the end. And then reality is you're not getting the best productive workforce if they're not paying attention to their own mental well-being.
I could not agree more on that point. And we often go out there and we spend a lot of time on the road talking to so many employers today, and I just feel like they're overwhelmed on the benefit management side, that they've just got a sea of apps to choose from, not a
Yeah,
lot of engagement, right?
that used to drive me crazy. I'm like, wait. Healthcare, it should be seamless, and we don't want all these different apps and all these different, because what you want is simplicity. Because you signed up for benefits, right? Well, you don't need your benefits when you sign up for it. It's 3 months down the road
That's
when
right.
you have some kind of health scare or mental health scare. How simple and easy is it to get the information for your employees, so they get the access? And a lot of times it's hard, and they're not, they need it fast. They need it now. They don't need 15,000 different apps. So I would encourage simplicity, simplicity, simplicity.
I am so with you on that point. Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you, now that you've gotten so much advice from so many people over the years, and you also give a lot of advice, but you've received a lot of advice as well, because we've all had amazing mentors that have helped us along the way, like your CFO. I wanted to ask you, what's some of the best advice that you've been given over the years?
Yeah, so I'll start with Aunt Millie. Never forget where you came from, because humility can go a long way. And I think she's so right. I think kind of the best leadership advice I got was make sure you're listening. And the most important thing that you can do is listen. And people want to be heard, and they want to know that that it's not just about you, that you have two ears and one mouth, right? That was the words that they used at the time. And so I thought, and I always really tried and continue to try to be a good listener, because I think it's very impactful. For me, it's all about taking the lessons I've learned through my life journey and sharing that wisdom with others. And for me now, it's about how can I be helpful? How can I impact others? How can I help people on their life journey? And how can I give back to the community? And really, that's my purpose now. And those are my guiding principles.
I love that. I love that. We're almost out of time, so I'm going to wrap by asking you a couple last questions. Okay. All right. All
Yeah.
right. So what's something about you that might surprise people?
I don't know if it'll surprise people, but I am incredibly competitive.
Oh, we see
And,
that.
and my husband and I got kicked out of a yoga class for being
Oh,
too competitive with each other.
is that even possible?
Yes, we were doing hot yoga, and and you know how when after you're on the floor and you have to stand up, I said, I'm just gonna rest here. My husband goes, I win. And the yoga instructor is like, could you too? And I will tell you, we laughed all the way through the parking lot to the car. Like, how does one get kicked out of yoga? This is supposed to be meditative. So that's, yeah.
That is so good. That is a first for us on the show. We have not heard anyone that's gotten kicked out of hot yoga. I love that, Karen. No one would suspect you would get kicked out of hot yoga. My second question is, you inspire so many people. Who inspires you?
Well, there's two. One is Aunt Millie. She will continue to inspire me. Her life lessons have impacted me and continue to impact me. And my husband. He is very focused on mental health. He went back to college to get his master's in public health administration at 49 years old.
Wow.
He thought there wasn't enough being done in the mental health space, so he started the Quell Foundation. He's celebrating his 10-year anniversary of the foundation.
Wow.
He's given over $3 million of scholarships to kids all across the country.
Wow. Incredible.
He has done 2 documentaries, one following people around that have mental health diagnosis that you would never suspect, but yet they did. And he's been sharing it with companies and with colleges and universities. He's done one specifically for first responders because they see
Oh, yes.
trauma every day.
Mm.
And he's trained the LA Fire, Chicago MPD, Chicago Fire MPD, and he's been all across the country showing his documentary. And he's now working on a third one for access for college athletes. He's very focused and is a mission. So yes, he's a big inspiration to me, and I am so fortunate, to call him my husband.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that, Karen. I want to wrap by saying the following to everyone listening. I can't tell you how much I've learned from this conversation. And if you have too, which I know you will, please share the episode. Karen, I am so appreciative for you taking the time and just helping us to learn more. You're such a champion on mental health and healthcare in general. You truly have been a trailblazer in the industry and an inspiration to so many. So thank you for being here today. And for everyone else, hit that recharge, subscribe button, and pick up Karen's memoir. Got to pick this up, okay? Taking Up Space.